The Flagship Hotel was built on a pier in Galveston, Texas. People would occasionally fish off the balcony of their room, so the hotel instituted strict policies prohibiting such behavior. They used extensive signage, check-in agreements, and fines. However, when they did this, they found the problem actually got worse as even more people cast their rods from balconies. It turns out that the same phenomenon seems to occur among top managers. Most of us can think of some pretty bad examples of managerial misconduct that have occurred in recent years. How often have you picked up the Wall Street Journal only to find that someone has, in one way or another, cooked the books? A lot of people and organizations go to great lengths to try to prevent such bad behavior. Wei Shi of Indiana University, Brian Connolly from Auburn University, and Bob Hoskisson from Rice University got a closer look at this problem with their recent paper on cognitive evaluation theory. These authors focus on 3 external controls that should, according to agency theory, reduce the likelihood of financial fraud on the part of top managers. The first thing they consider is powerful shareholders who have the ability to impose strict monitoring. The second is the threat of takeovers, which should keep top managers on their toes. The third is securities analysts who can impose pressure on managers to perform. Contrary to agency theory, cognitive evaluation theory suggests that the presence of these external control mechanisms will actually increase the likelihood of bad behavior. The main idea is that when these external controls are present, they rob managers of the intrinsic motivation for behaving appropriately and shift the emphasis toward purely extrinsic motivators. Richard Titmuss was one of the first to discover this effect back in 1970, when he found that paying people for blood donations actually reduced the public's willingness to donate because the extrinsic monetary motivator robbed them of their intrinsic reasons for giving blood. So too with managers. Extrinsic motivators in the form of external controls can rob them of their intrinsic reasons for behaving in ways they know to be right. Shi, Connolly, and Hoskisson examined the possibility in twin studies. First, they looked at what was happening in the marketplace. They examined companies in the S&P 500 over a 13-year period and uncovered 265 cases of financial fraud. To examine powerful shareholders, they measured the presence of dedicated institutional investors. To examine the threat of takeovers, they measured the extent to which companies had takeover defense provisions. Lastly, to examine the pressure imposed by securities analysts, they measured analyst buy and sell recommendations. The authors found that all 3 of these things led to a greater likelihood that a company would experience financial fraud. Then, in a second study, the authors used policy capturing to look at the decisions that top managers actually make. They asked a sample of executive MBAs to report a sale appropriately in the first quarter of the current year, or fudge a little and report it in the last quarter of the prior year, which would engender some personal benefits. When the authors varied the scenario according to the same 3 variables described above, all 3 predicted how respondents reported the sale. So at the end of the day, just as it was with the Flagship Hotel, one might think that external controls would cut down on bad behavior. But Shi, Connolly, and Hoskisson found that external controls can have the opposite of their intended effect.